when you're talking about working in your own community and telling the history of your community, it's not work that you can do in isolation. You could do it in isolation, and then I'd probably be run run off the reservation. But I'm wanting to do it, I guess, with the consent or with some kind of consensus, knowing that in reality, nobody will be able to agree 100% on everything, but that in general, people that I trust and respect as elders, as culture bearers, that they would be in general agreement with what I'm doing. And so it's a process where you go through, because it's not my story. It's also not their story. These stories don't belong to the elders. They belong to all of us. They belong, to the little kids that haven't heard them. They have a right to hear them. And so they belong to everybody, but there's a certain amount of control that people want or say that they want and how they'll be told. And so sometimes that process to me seems slow and painful, and then you have to deal with all of the things that people feel, like fear, or that their privacy is being invaded now. Or there's also a feeling that there isn't going to be a value for what's told and what's shared. And I have experienced that when I've had teachers ask me to go to the elders to ask for permission to do things. And when I've come back with advice from the elders, it hasn't been valued or respected. And so some of those fears are probably founded on experience. But I think in general that teachers have evolved in their thinking, and most teachers that I work with are very respectful. In fact, they're fearful of doing something wrong, of giving inaccurate information. They're committed to doing it correctly in a good way and giving, authentic information to their students. So working with elders and working with the community is much different than working in isolation, because you're recognizing that these stories belong to people and that this is a collective history, that it's everybody's. And so recognizing that and trying to help people feel comfortable with it and how you're doing it is really difficult. And I always tell teachers that they have to do that. And then when I have to do it myself, I find it just as difficult, and I'm impatient and I get frustrated. And so I have people that I talk with when I get to that place. And I find that things usually work themselves out. However, it doesn't make the frustration any less, or the pain any less hurtful, because sometimes people will just say, no, I don't want you to do that. Don't tell that story. And I'm like always saying, why? Why can't I tell it? Why don't we want to tell it? I want it to be living. It's one thing to document it and preserve it and archive it, and then it's all locked up. And it's not living anymore. It's just preserved. Preserves are in a jar on the shelf. I want it to be living in the minds of kids and people today. I want it to be living knowledge. And that's my commitment and what I feel. And that's our responsibility as Indian people. That's how it continues. You share it and pass it on, and you're generous. And so part of it is getting over people feeling like they were exploited in the past, for something that got published that they didn't agree to. So it's dealing with past bad experiences, feeling like now your privacy is invaded and that you're being asked to share something that nobody has cared about, or that they've totally devalued or put down. And now it's like, okay, wait a minute. So it's very complicated. And I don't think that Governor Schweitzer had any idea the complexity of the charge that he gave. But it was the right thing to do. And so what gets done will be done in the context of that complexity of past and present experience and feeling and kind of telling about where the community is. I feel privileged to be able to do work that's so important to my community. It's important to me, and it has become my work and kind of life's vocation, I guess. So I'm lucky. I'm lucky. But it is not without sometimes cost or emotion. So I guess the Creator thinks I can handle it. And so I'm willing to take on things that are difficult and have difficult conversations. And I'm willing to do that because maybe it paves the way. I heard Angela Davis say something really remarkable, and it came at a good time because I was feeling discouraged. And she said that she was talking about, her community, but it's so comparable to the Indian community, where there really aren't individual victories or achievements, but they're community victories. Because anything that I'm doing, the reason I have the opportunity to do what I'm doing, and that I have the access and education to do what I'm doing, is really not because I'm anything remarkable or that I have had great achievement or strength or fortitude. It has to do with all of the work that went on before me, so that when I was in this place in this time, I was able to do that. And so anything that I get done is because of everything that everybody else did behind me. And so I thought that was a very powerful way of looking at it and saying that anything that we do comes on the sacrifice and cost and work and effort of all of those people that went before us to bring us to this place and time that Indian people have a voice.